Hello everyone and welcome back to the farm. We're still taking a look back, and if you look at this field from August, it's a mess. This is the area behind the barn. These weeds are waist to chest high, and I'm about 5 feet 10 inches. So every time I have to go to the tractor path or any of the rear areas of my property, I have to push my way through all these weeds. It's a disaster. There's piles of dirt under here. There's pieces of concrete, there's sticks and branches, and if you look around the entire back of the barn area behind the planting field also, it's just endless weeds as far as the eye can see. Now, let's take a look even further back to May. You may remember that a nice guy named Ken came out and he cleared my whole property with just that one skid steer. Well, Ken and I made a deal, and in mid-August he came back to the property, and you may notice something's different. He brought a relatively small bulldozer, and he took care of all of those weeds, and he leveled the entire rear portion of this front acreage, the area behind the barn and the area behind the planting fields. Look at this. It's beautiful. What a difference before and after. There's no more weeds, there's no piles of dirt, there's no debris, no concrete, there's just some remnants of some sticks and branches and whatnot. Not bad. And this only cost a few $100s, so it was definitely money well spent. So while the opportunity availed itself, I went and I bought an incredibly overpriced bag of grass seed. This was the cheapest contractor grade grass seed, and it was over $100. But I grabbed my very small broadcast spreader, filled it up with grass seed, and I wanted to plant grass across this entire rear field. All the area behind the barn and all the area behind the planting field. So about 45 seconds in, pushing this little broadcast spreader, I really started to contemplate all the reasons why I wanted to do this, because this is a lot of field to plant with just that little tiny broadcast spreader. And if you've ever used one of these broadcast spreaders, they're great if you have a perfectly smooth lawn or piece of property. This area back here is absolutely not perfectly smooth. But after about a half hour, I got the area behind the field, the planting field, seeded. So then it was just a matter of breaking up the entire rest of this backyard into sections. And 3 bags of grass seed later, about $300 worth of grass seed, I managed to get all of this back area seeded. Now, the problem with growing grass is that it takes a lot of grass seed and a lot of time, and I'm well aware that this first application of grass seed is not going to be all that I'm going to have to put down. So despite the challenges of using the very small broadcast spreader, I got a nice even spread of grass seed across the entire rear of the yard behind the barns, halfway up the driveway to the road, to the side of the driveway, and across the back behind the planting field. This took about 2.5 hours to do with that little broadcast spreader. But if we fast forward about 6 or 8 weeks to October, a little bit of rain and some late season warmth, and look, the grass has started to grow. Another rare treat that occurred in the late fall is that my mom paid me a visit to the farm. This is indeed a rare treat. My mom has knee problems, so it's hard for her to navigate this rough terrain, but she hadn't seen the backfield since it was planted. She hadn't seen a lot of my equipment. She hadn't seen the new tractor or the plow, and she was astounded by how big and heavy and robust the stuff was. She also felt a little adventurous, and I coaxed her a little bit, and we took a walk down the tractor path, and we went all the way back out to the land bridge that I had started clearing. It was a beautiful late afternoon, and it was nice to have Mom at the farm. Another highlight of the fall was that I purchased a very heavy-duty wagon kit from Harbor Freight. This thing has a 1,200 pound capacity. And it took about 30 minutes to put together, and I wanted to use this to carry equipment as I go back and forth across the farm. But I figured I'd put another type of load into it as a test, and I took Mom for a spin up the driveway. She was thrilled. It has a nice flat bottom, and once I loaded it into the truck and brought it to the farm, I immediately filled it with my chainsaw, and then I filled it with my weed whacker, and I took it for its maiden voyage out into the back area of my property by the land bridge. And this thing works great. Those off-road tires are great, the steering is nice and smooth, it rolls perfectly well, and it's very easy to carry heavy loads. I highly recommend this cart kit. This thing is great. I'm very happy I got it. I wish I could figure out how to motorize it, but maybe that's a project for another day. And of course, the tractor saga continues. After I spent the entire season waiting for this thing to come back, I used it to clear my land bridge, which you'll see in a video, and I must have rode over a stump or a stick or something that put a puncture in the front driver's side tire. And I came to the farm one day and it was deflated. So I used my small battery-powered tire inflator, which has a great track record of working. I've used this thing everywhere. I'll post a link for it. But the puncture was so large in the tire that this obviously couldn't fill it up, but it did show me where the puncture was. So with the tire unable to be inflated, I need to get the wheel off and bring the wheel and the tire in to have a patch applied or to have a puncture repair done. But of course, that involves getting the wheel off. And as you can see, there's 6 bolts that hold this wheel on. And I thought, you know, they're small bolts. How hard could they be to come off? And yet again, reality was far different than my expectation. I was able to get 3 of these bolts off, but it was a bit of a struggle. Here you see me doing the old jumping on it routine, which worked, but for the 3 that wouldn't come off, I tried everything. I tried a breaker bar, I tried a lug nut remover, the lug nut remover with a breaker bar, I tried crescent wrenches, I tried applying heat, I tried basically everything that there was to try, including PB Blaster and the works. In another video you saw that I brought a gas generator to the farm to sharpen the blades of my brush hog. Well, in the end, I used that gas generator along with an electric impact driver and some very small impact bits, which I had to go buy at Harbor Freight because these are so small. And it took probably 20 minutes with the impact driver to get the 3 bolts off and applying heat. They just would not come off. I don't know if they were frozen or what the deal was, but some insidious machine must have put these things on. The one last topic to cover in this video is my Allman TLB 325 compact loader backhoe. This thing just won't work right for me. It keeps shutting off, keeps dying. So I know it's a fuel issue, and the first thing I did was check the fuel filter, and it was disgusting. It was filled with all sorts of crap. So fortunately it had a part number on it, and I was able to get a replacement pack on Amazon basically overnight. And because it was the simplest and quickest thing to do, I figured why not just replace this and maybe this will solve the problem. So it was pretty straightforward. There was a pressure clamp and then a hose clamp that held the old fuel filter on, and it was simply a matter of out with the old, in with the new, and then fire it up and test it. So that's what I did. It cranked, it filled with fuel, and immediately all sorts of sludge filled the brand new fuel filter. So I then looked in the gas tank and I could see a lot of particulate. So I think I need to drain the gas. That's probably step number 1, and clear the fuel tank. But it worked and it ran and it seemed to be running good. So I figured let's take it for a ride. So I increased the throttle and I took it down my little path that I cleared. Notice this is before everything was cut down. But that's where the fun ended, because once just a little bit of load was placed on the tractor, it died, and then it wouldn't start. And this is how I'm leaving it till spring. The next task is to clean the carburetor and cross my fingers. So a lot of odd jobs covered in this video, and one more video to go to look back at the fall of this past year before we start diving into the winter of this year. So thanks for watching, and we'll see you on the next video.